At our 8th anniversary party, back when we were madly in love, Chloe held my hand affectionately and told her closest friends, "If Ethan and I don't end up together, you're forbidden from attending either of our weddings." 2 years later, Chloe got married, and the groom wasn't me. True to their word, her friends didn't attend her wedding. After the ceremony, Chloe confronted them, hurt, but her one friend who had never liked me slapped her hard across the face, tears streaming down her own. "Chloe, people who betray a loving heart deserve to die, so why wasn't it you?" The very night Chloe mailed her wedding invitations, I died alone in a forgotten corner. She was in an incredibly expensive gown, her every move poised and graceful. Her fiancé, Julian Carter, stood beside her, tenderly tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear, his eyes overflowing with adoration. The reception was crowded with influential guests, a far more ostentatious affair than my engagement party with Chloe had ever been. Julian scanned the room and asked with feigned nonchalance, "Didn't you invite your best friends? You guys are usually inseparable, but they're not here on such an important day. Did you have a fight?" He then added with a smirk, "Don't tell me they have a problem with me." Chloe's expression soured, but she forced a smile. "I'll check in with them." She tried calling each of them, but every call went to voicemail or a busy signal. The smile on Julian's face slowly vanished. He knew they were a tight-knit group, but they were fiercely loyal. He had assumed that on a day this important, they would at least show up for her, considering Chloe had been their friend for more than a decade. And there I was, standing right beside Chloe, just as I had countless times before. Except this time, no one could see me. I looked up at the stage and saw the silhouette of a picture-perfect couple, Chloe and Julian. I realized then how blind I had been, to have missed all the warning signs from the moment Julian first entered our lives. Julian took out his phone with a smug look, the screen open to his iMessage conversation with me. "Ethan, what's 10 years? I've never failed to get a woman I wanted. Chloe and I are getting married in 7 days. You got the guts to show up." I lowered my gaze, suddenly realizing it wasn't just a taunt. The malice behind it was clear as day. By the time I understood, it was far too late. I had the guts to come, but he wouldn't have the guts to see me, because I was already dead. When the reception ended, Julian and Chloe stumbled to the car, tumbling into the back seat. The driver, unfazed, started the engine. Julian leaned in close to Chloe, his breath heavy with alcohol against her skin. Chloe laughed, turning her head away before planting a quick kiss on his cheek. "You've had too much to drink." His voice softened into a gentle, pleading tone. "Don't be mad at me." Chloe chuckled, pulling him in by the collar for a long, breathless kiss. I suddenly sensed a shift in the air and drifted up to the roof of the car, watching their intimate struggle below. The warm summer breeze did nothing to warm my cold, spectral form. This gentle, fawning behavior was exactly what Chloe used to hate in a man. Whenever I had shown a softer, more dependent side, she would say, "A man needs to be a man. Don't act like that, you're giving me the creeps." It turned out that only my tenderness was unwelcome. By the time I snapped out of my thoughts, they had arrived at their destination. As they walked into the villa, an unseen force pulled me along, compelling me to follow them inside. Chloe kicked off her heels by the door and poured herself a glass of hot water. Julian came up right behind her, wrapping his arms around her slim waist. "Chloe, I'm scared." This time, it wasn't just Chloe who was surprised. I stared at him in disbelief. In all the time I'd known him, I had never once seen him show a hint of fear in his words or actions. Chloe turned to face him, the neckline of her dress, which she'd lowered earlier in the heat, revealing the smooth skin of her collarbones. She pressed herself against him as Julian unzipped her dress. "I'm scared Ethan will change his mind. Scared you'll leave me. Scared I can't truly have you." Chloe answered instantly, "He won't. He won't. Ethan won't go back on his word." Her certainty sent me into a daze. Back when we were deeply in love, Chloe had been just as certain, saying, "Never. I, Chloe Davis, will only ever love one person in my life, and that's Ethan Hayes." I truly believed then that she was the one I would spend the rest of my life with. Chloe and I had known each other for 16 years, from being desk mates in middle school, to attending the same high school, to dating as college freshmen and eventually starting a business together. We got engaged once Starlight Innovations was stable, and if things had gone as planned, we would have been married this year. But in our 16th year together, Chloe changed. When did it start? Maybe it was when she stopped sending me messages just to check in. Maybe it was when she'd sit across from me, staring at her phone with a smile she couldn't hide. Or maybe it was when she started sending Julian good morning and good night texts every single day. Person's heart can change in an instant. So when she broke up with me, she took all the blame, insisting it had nothing to do with that polished, sophisticated man. I respected her wishes and never showed her the evidence of Julian's taunts. When Julian first showed up, I didn't think much of it. He was the favored illegitimate son of a business partner, looking for some experience at our company. To secure the deal, Chloe asked for my input, suggesting we make him an assistant to handle menial tasks like getting coffee, essentially paying to babysit a rich kid while keeping him away from any real company business. I took her at her word, never imagining she would make Julian her personal assistant for a full year. Meanwhile, Chloe did everything she could to convince me to move to Europe to expand our market, where I stayed for another year. By the time I returned, she was known to everyone as the future Mrs. Carter, and I was just her ex-boyfriend. Before I had a chance to confront her, Chloe came to me first. She slid a letter of resignation across the desk, along with a stock transfer agreement. "Ethan," she said, "we always said that if one of us ever found someone who made our heart race more, we'd part ways amicably. You remember that, right?" As Chloe and Julian disappeared into the bedroom, I retreated to the living room. I was grateful that I could at least maintain this small distance, that I didn't have to witness the sordid details firsthand. Not that it mattered. Julian had already sent me plenty of photos and videos. Chloe had left her phone in the living room, and it wouldn't stop vibrating. I drifted closer and saw the number on the screen. It was mine. My mind fractured. I froze, my spectral fingertips trembling as the final moments before my death played out in my mind. A terrifying, helpless reel. I remember my death was not a dignified one. After agreeing to Chloe's terms for the breakup, I left the company. Julian found me, saying he wanted to talk. "What is there to talk about?" I asked, looking at him. He just scoffed. "Aren't you curious why I chose Chloe?" "Why?" I played along. He led me to a coffee shop near the office. "Honestly, I just wanted to see how deep her feelings for you really were. Turns out, not very." I had no desire to listen to his nonsense, but the moment I stepped outside, several men grabbed me and shoved me into a van. The vehicle jolted along rough roads, driving from the city of Chicago deep into the Illinois outskirts, from daylight into darkness, until all I could hear was the howling wind and feel the sting of branches scratching my bare arms. "Did Julian send you?" I asked, forcing my voice to remain steady. The four men before me were haggard, with hollow eyes and a strange, foul odor clinging to them. Their leader took a long drag from his cigarette, looking at me the way a butcher looks at a lamb. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I desperately tried to find a way out. "I don't have any cash on me, but let me go. Whatever he's paying you, I'll double it." My words were met with cruel, grating laughter, and the violent expressions on their faces told me I was doomed. "Kid, learn your lesson for the next life," one of them snarled. "Don't cross people you can't afford to cross." A steel pipe shattered my kneecaps. A heavy boot ground my knuckles into the dirt. Slaps left my face swollen and numb. One of them spoke with a hint of disappointment. "Too bad he's not a girl. We could have had some real fun." Another one chimed in with a greasy voice. "Look at that smooth skin. Does it really matter?" The first man shot back in disgust. "You think everyone's a sicko like you?" Listening to them, a chilling cold spread through me. Then one of them tore off my jacket. The pain was excruciating, the humiliation absolute. With my last ounce of strength, I bit down and tore a piece of flesh from my attacker, enraging the animal. And then my life, along with the pain, finally ended. My blood pooled on the forest floor. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing behind Chloe, watching as she held Julian's hand and announced their wedding date. I counted the days. Her wedding was scheduled for the 7th day after my death. At 1 in the morning, Chloe emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a towel. She picked up her phone from the sofa, and her pupils contracted when she saw the missed calls from my number. I huddled on the couch, my form trembling, my mind replaying the horror of my last moments. Julian's voice called out from the bedroom, "Chloe, what's wrong?" Chloe's expression hardened as she deleted the call history. Then she walked back to the bedroom and into his arms. I remember when I first moved to Europe, Chloe would still video chat with me. She'd complain about how stressful things were at the company and tell me how much she wished I was there with her. I'd be working on documents and tease her. "When did you get so needy? I've never heard you whine like this before." I thought it was just a harmless joke, but her face went pale in an instant. I only realized later that when two people spend enough time together, they start to unconsciously mimic each other's speech patterns. Julian must have used that same gentle, pleading tone with her often. The next morning, Chloe left Julian's apartment. Before she went, she placed a soft kiss on his cheek. "Sleep in," she whispered. "You don't need to go to the office today." I almost had to laugh. The Chloe I knew was obsessed with punctuality. Rain or shine, she was always up at dawn and never let me slack off, terrified of wasting a single minute of the workday. For 16 years, I had molded my life around the habits she enforced. But it turned out all her rules could be broken, and the person granted that special exception was never me. I followed Chloe to the office, where my assistant of 3 years was pacing anxiously outside Chloe's door, clutching a contract. When she saw Chloe, she rushed over. "Ms. Davis, there's an issue with the Apex Industries contract Mr. Hayes was negotiating. They're refusing to sign unless they can meet with him in person." Chloe barely glanced at the assistant, dismissing the concern as if it were nothing. "Then call Ethan," she said matter-of-factly. "He'll go." The assistant looked at Chloe awkwardly as the unanswered ringing from her phone filled the silence. Chloe's brow tightened, and she slammed the file she was holding onto her desk. "How long have you been trying?" "Since this morning, I haven't been able to get through." Chloe shot the young assistant an irritated look, impatience written all over her face. The assistant flinched slightly. "Yes, Ms. Davis." I stood beside the desk, wondering why my phone was unreachable. Just last night, a call from my number had gone to her phone. She probably thought I was ignoring her on purpose. I pressed my lips into a bitter, self-mocking smile and glanced idly at the contracts strewn across the desk. The terms had been altered significantly from what I had originally negotiated. It had to be Julian's doing. After all, he had taken my place. Chloe was silent for a long time, her eyes fixed on her phone. The screen showed her iMessage thread with me, where 2 minutes earlier she had sent a text, "Call me back ASAP." Her jaw was clenched, her anger simmering just below the surface, right until her best friend, Amelia Vance, called. Chloe, it's about Ethan. Ethan's not here. I'm looking for him too." Chloe cut her off. "If you reach him, tell him to get to the office immediately." Before Amelia could respond, Chloe hung up and strode into the conference room. I was dragged along by Chloe's hurried pace, a faint, dull ache echoing in my chest. She had hung up so fast. I desperately wanted to know what Amelia had been trying to say, but there was no way to find out. Was she going to say I was missing, or did she already know I was dead? How humiliating to have died in such a disgusting way. The conference room was silent. I had spent nearly 2 weeks negotiating that deal, only for Chloe to break up with me the moment it was ready to be finalized. A lot of people at the company said she was casting me aside now that I was no longer useful, and now she was paying the price. By the time Amelia arrived at the office, Chloe was in the middle of a tirade. "Can this company not function without Ethan? How can this entire team be less capable than one man?" Amelia's hand froze before it could knock on the door. She hesitated for a moment, then burst into the room. Julian Carter followed right behind her. "What's wrong, Chloe?" Julian asked, speaking before Amelia could. Chloe turned, her gaze passing right through me to land on Julian, completely ignoring Amelia standing beside him. "Look at this contract." Apex Industries suddenly changed their minds. They said they won't sign until they see Ethan. A flicker of something unreadable crossed Julian's eyes as he took the contract from her, flipping through the pages. "Do you think Ethan is behind this?" Julian left the accusation hanging in the air, but everyone in the room seemed to understand immediately. But Ethan wasn't playing any tricks, because Ethan was a ghost. Only Amelia stood there, her fists clenched at her sides. Chloe seemed to accept Julian's insinuation. She declared the meeting over, asking Julian to stay behind. Once everyone else had filed out, Amelia lunged forward and grabbed Chloe by the collar. "You are a piece of work, Chloe. Ethan is dead, and you won't even claim his body? This is the company he built, and you threw him out to be slandered by everyone. Are you even human?" Amelia shoved Chloe to the floor, then stormed out as furiously as she had arrived. I wanted to follow her, to ask how she knew I was dead. I also wanted to ask why she, the person who always seemed to despise me, was the one fighting for me now. Chloe's head hit the corner of the table, and Julian rushed to help her up. Why hadn't he intervened when Amelia attacked his fiancée? I suppose it's because he couldn't afford to cross the Vance family. He was nothing but a coward, preying on the weak and fearing the strong. Amelia said I was dead, but Chloe clearly didn't believe her. I could understand why. Chloe knew how much I valued my life. During my junior year of college, both of my parents died in a car crash, and when my grandmother heard the news, she had a fatal heart attack. Overnight, I lost everyone I was closest to. I was broken and lost, and it was Chloe who pulled me out of that abyss of grief. She told me I still had her, and that I had to live and take care of myself for her sake. After that, I cherished my life more than anything. After tending to the cut on her head, Chloe buried herself in her work, treating the news of my death as if it were some kind of joke. Even coming from her best friend, she refused to believe it was true. Chloe took over the Apex Industries account herself and went to their office to negotiate in person. I followed her into the building, surprised that Julian, who was usually glued to her side, was nowhere to be seen. This time, she was met by Vice President Miller. His eyes scanned the space behind her thoughtfully. "Mr. Hayes isn't with you?" The smile on Chloe's face vanished, her voice turning cool. "Mr. Miller, I am the head of Starlight Innovations." Those words, head of Starlight Innovations, jolted me. I remembered when she convinced me to move to Europe, she had said, "I don't want you to work so hard, Ethan. I can handle Starlight. Once this expansion is done, you should take a long rest." Her final "I love you" was lost in the noise of the crowded airport that night. In the end, Chloe had to concede another 5% of the profit margin to get the deal signed. As soon as it was done, she let out a visible sigh of relief. Then, a message came from Amelia with an address for a funeral home. Chloe scowled, typing furiously back, "Amelia, this joke has gone on long enough. I found that funny. Why would she think Amelia would ever conspire with me on a prank?" Amelia was her best friend, but she was also the one who disliked me the most. After Chloe and I started dating, Amelia made a point of never being around when I was. It wasn't until the night before our engagement party, when Amelia got completely drunk, that she grabbed my arm, solemnly placed my hand over Chloe's, and slurred, "If you ever dare to hurt her, I will kill you." I nodded, taking her words seriously. How could I ever have been anything but good to her? I had given Chloe everything, even using the insurance money from my parents' death to fund Starlight Innovations when we were starting out. Chloe drank a lot that night too, sitting with Amelia, Sophia, and Ella. Everyone was so happy, like we had found the greatest treasure in the world. She looked at her friends and said very clearly that if the man she married wasn't me, they were forbidden from coming to her wedding. They all agreed, but who really remembers promises made while drunk? Chloe tossed her phone onto the passenger seat. On the screen, the Amelia is typing bubble appeared and disappeared several times, but no message ever came through. A sudden, sharp pain tore through me, as if my very soul were being scorched, my consciousness starting to fade. I thought this was it. I was finally moving on. I had nothing left to hold on to anyway. When I opened my eyes again, I was watching Chloe admire her reflection in the mirror, adjusting her wedding dress over and over. A smile played on her lips as a videographer filmed her every move. I looked around the familiar room, now decorated with festive decals on the windows, and saw today's date circled with a red heart on the calendar by her vanity. It was her wedding day, and this apartment, their marital home, was the one I had personally designed and renovated for us 3 years ago. "I hope we don't hit traffic," Chloe's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "I'm so worried we'll be late." She was wringing her hands, clearly nervous. I turned and saw Chloe's parents emerge from the other room. They had more gray hair than I remembered, but they were both smiling, energized by the happy occasion. "You've always been so impatient, ever since you were a little girl," her mother said, arranging traditional good luck charms on the bed. "It's a good thing Ethan was always so patient with you." She didn't seem to notice the flicker of awkwardness that crossed Chloe's face. The smile vanished from her father's face. His expression became unreadable, his eyes clouded over. He gently stopped his wife's hand and guided Chloe into the other room. Chloe didn't correct her, just gently soothed her mother's confusion. I didn't follow them, but I could hear the strained, intermittent sounds of their argument. I heard my name mentioned again. As I drifted closer, I heard her father say in a low, heavy voice that her mother had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's last year. When Chloe came out, she looked pale and distressed. She was trying to call someone on her phone, but couldn't get through. The videographer finally broke the tension. "The groom is here. It's time to go." A procession of more than a dozen black Maybachs pulled away from the building in a grand display. I settled on the roof of her car, staring into the dawn sky. I didn't know how much longer I would be bound to Chloe, but I realized I no longer felt any pain. Inside the car, Chloe was frantically trying to make a call, the constant busy signal making her more and more agitated. Suddenly, the entire motorcade came to a halt. I looked ahead and saw another procession of black cars, identical to ours, stopped on the opposite side of the road. The lead car was a hearse, its hood covered in white and yellow lilies and chrysanthemums. A funeral procession, a clash of celebration and mourning. Chloe's already pale face turned ashen. No one from the other side got out of their cars, and the two processions remained at a standstill. My non-existent heart began to pound, pushing me toward the hearse. Peering through the tinted rear window, I could just make out a familiar face, and in her hands, she was holding a photograph of me. I froze, stunned. This quiet, tree-lined street was not on the way to any cemetery. They had to have come this way on purpose. The chest I thought could no longer feel pain was suddenly pierced by an agonizing blade. Chloe's eyes were red with frustration. What bride wants her perfect day ruined by such a bad omen? Julian got out to negotiate, but the back window of the lead car remained closed. The driver simply cracked his own window and said flatly, "The dead have the right of way." In the end, it was Chloe's motorcade that backed up and yielded the road. The funeral procession sped past. I tried to follow it, but I couldn't move more than a few feet away from Chloe. She was on the verge of tears, but Julian looked almost triumphant. He glanced back at the departing hearse with a smirk before turning to Chloe, his expression instantly softening into one of gentle concern. Chloe and Julian were now running terribly late. When they got back to the apartment, Chloe's parents were nowhere to be seen, but Julian didn't seem to care. He just went through the motions before they all piled back into the cars and rushed to the venue. Julian had rented out an entire country estate for the wedding. The vast lawn was set up with a stunningly romantic stage, like something out of a fairy tale, but I couldn't appreciate any of it. All I could see was the image of Amelia holding my photograph. Amelia Vance, the one who had never liked me, looking gaunt and exhausted, her eyes red and swollen. I was dead, and she seemed genuinely heartbroken. The ceremony, postponed from 11 to noon, finally began. Chloe was married. She held out her hand, letting Julian slide the ring onto her finger as they solemnly exchanged vows to spend their lives together. On the large screen behind them, a slideshow of their memories played on a loop, a video the officiant announced Chloe had edited herself. Julian beamed, but I watched with a dull ache. I was the one who had taught Chloe how to edit videos. Throughout the reception, Julian kept glancing toward the main entrance, as if expecting someone to arrive. And Chloe, in every spare moment she had, was trying to make a phone call. By the end of the night, the person Julian was waiting for never showed, and Chloe never got through on the phone. After the reception, Julian's father chatted with Chloe for a moment, his final comment landing on the subject of Amelia. "I was surprised not to see the Vance heiress here today. Julian told me you two have been friends for more than a decade. I was looking forward to meeting her." Chloe's hand, hanging at her side, clenched into a fist. It wasn't just Amelia. Sophia and Ella hadn't come either. All three of them had been in that funeral procession. A strange, sour feeling pricked at my eyes. I remembered what Chloe had said all those years ago, that if she ever married someone who wasn't me, they were forbidden to come. It was a foolish, youthful promise, but they had kept it for her. She was the only one who hadn't. Chloe finally reached Amelia the next morning. Amelia didn't say a word, just sent Chloe a location pin with a specific instruction: "Don't bring Julian. None of us want to see him." Chloe had the call on speaker, so Julian heard every word. He put on a convincing show of being hurt, which made Chloe's heart ache for him. She hugged his arm tightly. "It's okay," she cooed. "They'll see how wonderful you are eventually." Then she grabbed her jacket, gave him a quick kiss, and rushed out the door. She drove fast, eventually finding Amelia, Sophia, and Ella waiting on the side of a deserted road. I felt the air around me grow colder, even though the temperature outside was over 100 degrees. We were in the middle of nowhere. The ground at Amelia's feet was littered with cigarette butts, another one smoldering between her fingers. When Sophia and Ella saw Chloe get out of the car, they both turned their heads away. Chloe walked right up to Amelia. Before she could even speak, Amelia's fist connected squarely with her jaw. Blood trickled from her nose and the corner of her mouth. Amelia had always been a firecracker, rebellious and tough. She'd even taken up kickboxing and was frighteningly good at it. Chloe staggered back, fury blazing in her eyes. Her voice was shrill. "Amelia, are you insane? I haven't even had a chance to ask why you all skipped my wedding, and you dragged me out to this dump just to punch me? If you want to end our friendship, just say so." Amelia didn't answer. She just grabbed Chloe by the collar and started dragging her up a nearby hill. And then I remembered. This was the place. This was where I died. When they reached the top, Amelia kicked Chloe's legs out from under her. "Chloe," she snarled, "people who betray a loving heart deserve to die. So why was Ethan the one who died?" On the dry, cracked earth, I could still see the dark, faded stains of my own blood. Chloe's arms gave out as she tried to push herself up, and she collapsed back onto the ground. She looked up at Amelia in shock, stammering, "You said, Ethan's dead." Amelia just stared at her, her gaze colder and more terrifying than death itself. Sophia and Ella nodded silently, their own fists clenched so tight their knuckles were white. I could tell they wanted to hit her too. Chloe still refused to believe it. She let out a wild laugh and scanned the empty clearing, then screamed, "Ethan, get out here. I know you're here. You're all in on this together, aren't you?" She sounded like a lunatic. Suddenly, her eyes fixed on a patch of tall grass. I followed her gaze and saw it, one of the cufflinks she had given me for our engagement, lying in the dirt. She scrambled over and snatched it up, her fingers tracing the dried blood still crusted on its surface. I think in that moment she finally accepted that I was gone. The silence that followed was absolute. Chloe sat on the ground from 10 in the morning until noon, not saying a single word. Amelia chain-smoked cigarettes as the midday sun beat down, making the air shimmer. I retreated to the shade of a nearby tree. When Chloe finally tried to stand, her legs were unsteady, and her hands were trembling far more than they had when she exchanged rings at her wedding. Amelia ground out her cigarette under her heel. She looked up at Chloe, her eyes cold. "Chloe, we're done. The next time we see each other, we'll be business rivals. And I won't show you any mercy." Chloe was the only one of the four who didn't come from a wealthy family. She had become friends with them in school because she was smart and charismatic. Amelia had gone to the same schools as us all the way through college, while Sophia and Ella had gone to universities overseas. By the time they returned, Chloe and I were already a couple. Over the years, they had helped us immensely. Starlight Innovations would never have succeeded without their support. But now, their group was fracturing. After 16 years, it seemed we had all lost our way. Chloe stayed on that hill for a long time, from sunset until the moon was high in the sky. The wind whipped around us, sending a chill through my spectral form. She finally answered a call from her father, her voice hoarse. "I'm still looking into options for Mom's condition. We can't keep relying on others' help." I straightened up from where I was leaning against a tree. Last year had been my most difficult year in Europe. I barely had time for a video call with her parents once a month. I never noticed anything was wrong with her mother over the screen. And during that same year, while Chloe was falling for Julian, she had apparently been so distracted that she hadn't even known her own mother was sick until the day of her wedding. Her father was quiet for a moment before he replied. "Amelia and Ella came to visit us last year. You don't need to worry about us. We won't interfere with your choices, but we want you to know that some people, once you let them go, are gone forever. You're an adult now, Chloe. Don't live to regret your decisions." Her father's words seemed to break her, and she finally began to sob. It was late when she returned to the apartment. Julian had been calling her nonstop, and she was growing impatient with his persistence. It reminded me of how she used to be when I would call her too many times. She drove even faster on the way back, the roar of the engine failing to drown out her anguished screams. But she had been warned not to regret her choices. Seeing her like this now, I felt a flicker of contempt. Julian was waiting for her at the door. Seeing her pale face, his tone was no longer demanding like it had been on the phone, but soft and gentle. "Honey, you're back." Chloe pushed past him, suppressing her turmoil, only to find the apartment in complete disarray. The art I had collected was piled on the floor, many of the frames broken. Shards of a shattered vase littered the carpet, the scene of a recent tantrum. Chloe frowned, her voice flat. "Did you do this?" Julian just smiled, as if nothing was wrong. New life, new look. All that old stuff was outdated. I didn't like it. Chloe was silent for a moment, but ultimately said nothing. While Chloe was in the shower, Julian had his men throw out all of my dismantled belongings. He took a picture of the pile of trash and sent it to my phone, a final, triumphant taunt. "See? I've erased every trace of you." It was a message with a double meaning. Even though my killers never named him, it was obvious Julian was behind it all. What kind of sick person sends messages to a dead man? A moment later, a reply came through. Julian's eyebrows shot up in surprise as he unlocked his phone, only for a gruesome, bloody photo to fill the screen. Julian stared at it for a second, then, just as Chloe came out of the bathroom, he threw the phone and screamed. Chloe examined the phone and concluded it must have been a virus. She told him to just get a new one. After Julian was asleep, she took her phone into the study. She stood by the window in the dim light, her expression unreadable. She went through her call log and unblocked the landline number that had been trying to reach her all day. A quick search revealed it was the Chicago Police Department, so that's why Amelia had burst into the conference room, demanding to know why she wouldn't even claim my body. Chloe called the number back. The officer who answered was stunned for a moment. When he told her that my death was a homicide and that the suspects were already in custody, Chloe's face turned grim. As soon as she hung up, she called Amelia, who answered immediately, as if she'd been waiting for the call. "Was that you?" Chloe asked, her voice tight with anger. "Did you send that picture to Julian?" "Amelia, even if Ethan is dead, you can't blame Julian for it." Amelia let out a low, dark chuckle. "An innocent man has nothing to fear." What are you so afraid of, Chloe? Unless, of course, you had something to do with Ethan's death. Chloe's face flushed with rage, and her shrill voice filled the room. And you think you're so perfect, Amelia? Weren't you the one who introduced me to the Carters in the first place? You've been secretly in love with Ethan for a decade, haven't you? You set this whole thing up just to get him away from me. You're just as responsible for his death as anyone. The Chloe I knew would never have shifted blame like that, but now she was pinning my death on Amelia without a second thought. Her accusations meant nothing to me, like a stone dropped into a vast, silent ocean. Because Amelia hadn't introduced Chloe to Julian, desperate to land more clients for the company, I had asked Amelia for an introduction to the Carter family. She set up the meeting, and Julian's father brought him along to the dinner. I later handed the account over to Chloe to manage, which is how Julian ended up interning with us. As for Chloe's accusation that Amelia set her up, I knew Amelia would never stoop to something so manipulative. She was too direct, too explosive. Her solution to most problems was, just punch them, as she had demonstrated earlier that day. For some reason, I suddenly remembered the first time I met Amelia. It was the first day of middle school, and we were both late. I was mortified, but she just gave me a brilliant, carefree smile and said, "It's not the end of the world. Don't sweat it." I thought she was easygoing and cheerful back then, but later, I saw her corner another student in an alley and beat them up, and after that, I started avoiding her. I didn't even learn her name until she became friends with my deskmate, Chloe. Chloe wanted to know if Julian was involved in my death, but neither of them would speak of it. And in that moment, I realized I was free. I drifted away from her in a daze, wandering the dark streets with no destination and no one to look for. I saw an old man struggling to pedal a cargo tricycle. In the back were my prized art prints, now torn and broken, looking much like I felt. I followed him, curious to see what he would do with them. The old man stopped on the side of the road to catch his breath, and a familiar Maybach pulled up beside him. When Amelia stepped out, my non-existent heart jumped. Chloe's accusation echoed in my mind. "You've been secretly in love with Ethan for a decade." Amelia carefully loaded each of the damaged prints into her car. She gave the old man a generous amount of cash and a bottle of water, and he thanked her profusely. Suddenly, I didn't care about the details of my death anymore. I just chose to follow her. Maybe she would lead me to my grave, and then I could finally disappear for good. Amelia did not disappoint. Late that night, carrying a six-pack of beer, she walked into a cemetery. I followed close behind her, staying right by her side. She led me to a plot in a beautiful, quiet section of the grounds. She must have spent a fortune. She had arranged my entire funeral. I should have thanked her. She drank the beer in long gulps, tears falling like scattered pearls onto the grass. "Ethan," she whispered, "I wish you hadn't disliked me so much. I wish I had been the one you loved. I just wish I had been braver." Amelia's threat to become enemies in business quickly became a reality. She cut all ties with Starlight Innovations and made it known throughout the Chicago business community that anyone who worked with them would be working against her. No one dared to cross the Vance family. Chloe was drowning, working frantically but unable to stop the bleeding. The company we had built together was going up in flames. She finally cornered Amelia in her office, just as Sophia and Ella arrived. Chloe held out her hand. "Give me Ethan's phone." Amelia raised an eyebrow. "Why should I?" Chloe was speechless with rage. She threw a stack of photos onto the floor. "These pictures, they were on his phone, weren't they? He knew about me and Julian. He knew I was going to break up with him before he even came back, didn't he?" She spoke the words slowly, as if each one was a knife twisting in her own gut. 3 days earlier, Amelia had mailed her a package. I had watched her print out the contents. All the photos Julian had sent me, along with screenshots of our conversations, filled with his taunts and gloating. 16 years, Amelia said, her voice laced with contempt, and you never truly knew him. He chose you because he loved you, Chloe, but you were never worthy of that love. Amelia then threw her out of the office, but not before landing a few more punches. Sophia and Ella just looked away, pretending not to notice. I already knew the truth about my death, but Julian had covered his tracks well. The 4 men were in prison, and the case was considered closed. Strangely, I found myself bound to Chloe again, even closer this time, unable to move away from her. When Chloe threw the photos in Julian's face, he tried to explain. "If you hadn't taken him to that coffee shop, he would still be alive. If it wasn't for you, I would be married to Ethan right now." She demanded to know why he had sent me those pictures, whispering to herself, "Ethan must have been in so much pain." I felt a bitter twist in my gut. Whether I had been in pain or not, it was over. but being forced to watch her phony, dramatic repentance, that was a new kind of agony. Her words finally seemed to snap something in Julian. He stood up, grabbed a picture frame off the table, and hurled it at her. "Don't you dare act so high and mighty with me, Chloe," he roared. "So I made the first move. Did I force you into my bed? Amelia Vance had no problem turning me down. Why couldn't you? I only chose you because Amelia was out of my league. Otherwise, I would have never given you a second glance. I thought you were close with the Vances, but instead of gaining an advantage, you've made them our enemy. Do you really think you're so beautiful that any man would fall at your feet? The only reason I was ever interested was because I thought you were tight with those families. We're getting a divorce tomorrow." Chloe would never agree to a divorce. In the days I was bound to her, I realized she had become a complete narcissist. She chose Julian because the Carter Corporation offered her more than I ever could. The only reason she wished I was still alive was so I could fix her problems for her. If I had lived, she would have been the ultimate winner. They fought constantly, and Julian began to unravel, his mental state deteriorating under Chloe's torment. His father visited several times, always trying to smooth things over. "Things will get better, son. And look, Starlight is back on its feet. Just get on your wife's good side, have her patch things up with her friends. The Carter family is counting on you." Starlight Innovations was indeed recovering, but only because Chloe had made a deal with Amelia. To my surprise, Chloe had traded her worthless shares in the company for the location of my grave. Starlight had a new owner, and Chloe never found my real grave. Amelia had saved the company I built and played Chloe for a fool. She had given her the location of a different Ethan Hayes' grave. As Chloe stood before the wrong headstone, seething with frustration, I saw Amelia and Sophia watching from a distance with disdain. Her belated grief was worthless, but they were wrong about her motives. She wasn't mourning me. She just couldn't live with her own failure, couldn't bear to watch the company we built crumble into nothing. She didn't love me anymore. That was the truth. Chloe searched every cemetery in the state but never found my grave. I was glad. It meant my final resting place could remain peaceful and undisturbed. I was finally freed from my connection to Chloe on the day they destroyed each other. She had gone completely insane. Every day, she would repeat the same phrase over and over. If Ethan were here, none of this would have happened. One night, she took a knife from the kitchen and went into the bedroom. She stood over Julian's sleeping form and killed him with a single thrust. Then, she wrapped his dead hand around the knife's handle and plunged it into her own stomach. And with that, I was finally free. Amelia had buried me in the plot next to my parents. Chloe would have never thought to look there. She no longer cared enough to remember them. When I returned to my grave, my parents were standing there, bathed in a soft light, as if they had been waiting for me. They told me they were here to take me home. Behind them, my grandmother stood leaning on her cane, waving to me. Before I left, I made one last, selfish wish in the mortal world, that Amelia Vance would find happiness, always.